Hi, today we're going to be working on Lesson 8, Session 3. We're going to be working on writing a decimal in standard form. So we've worked on word form, we've worked a little bit with expanded form. Today we're going to be learning how to write a decimal in standard form from another form, from either word form or expanded form. So we are going to be working in our Ready Math workbook. Will be on pages 155 through 160. So I want you to go ahead and open up your Ready Math workbook to page 155. All right, awesome. So we're going to start out on page 155. We are going to look at this problem. It says, a school holds a running race. Abba finishes the race 1 and 16 thousandths seconds ahead of Nadia. Brianne finishes 2 and 35 hundredths seconds ahead of Chandra. What decimals represent these measurements? Use a model to support your answer. So remember, we have our 3 questions. So the first question is, what is this problem about? So this problem is about a school that holds a race, and we have some finishers, okay? And some of them and they all finish in a certain amount of time. So that's what this question is talking about. There we go. Now, the next question is, what are we trying to find out? We're trying to find out what decimals represent these measurements. And then finally, we need to know what is the important information from this question. So the first important information is that the first runner finishes 1 and 16 thousandths seconds ahead of Nadia, and the second runner, or Brianne, I should say, finishes 2 and 35 hundredths seconds ahead of Chandra. So these are our 2 word form values or numbers or decimals, however we want to say it, that we are going to be writing in standard form. Remember that standard form is taking it from word form and just writing it as the numerals all together. Okay, so to do this, I think that the best method that we can use to do this is going to be to create a place value chart. So you know how much I love a good place value chart. So we're going to need 2. We're going to need one for this first value and then one for this value. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my rectangle. And then I know that I have at least one hole before the and, so I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to leave my part for my decimal. So I have my ones, my decimal, and then my place value is thousandths. So I need to make sure that I cover tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. And don't forget that THS at the end. Okay, so now we're going to look up at the top and we're going to say, how many ones do we have? 1, 1. So we're going to put a 1 in the ones place. Then we see the word and, which means that is our decimal point. Excuse me. And then we have 16 thousandths. This is where it always gets a little bit tricky. Now remember, you need to have the 16 end up over here at the thousandths place. So if we were to write, let me see if I can find my pencil, 16 like that, we would have no digit in the thousandths place. And you might say, okay, well, why don't you just put a 0 in the thousandths place? Does this say 16 thousandths? No, this says 160 thousandths. It does not mean the same thing. So we can't just put the 16 right next to the decimal place. We have to do something else. So we know that the 16 needs to end at the thousandths, and the 16, we know 16 has 2 digits. So we're going to put the 1 and the 6 there so that we have our 6 in the thousandths and then our 1 in the hundredths. But can we leave it like that? No, it's not done yet. We have to put in our placeholder 0. So we're going to put this 0 right there. Now we're going to check it out and see what it says. 1 and 0 tenths, 100th, and 16 thousandths. When we think of when we think of this as a whole, we think of that as 16, and then our least place value is thousandths. So 1 and 16 thousandths. So we would write our decimal as 1 and 16 thousandths. Now let's do our second value here. Our second value is the 2 and 35 hundredths. So if I were going to do that one, I'm going to make another place value chart. And then this time I know that I have a whole, a 1. I have my decimal point. And then I have, in this case, I have 35 hundredths. So I have tenths and hundredths. Do I need a thousandths place on this one? I don't, because I have tenths and hundredths, because hundredths is our smallest place value in this case. So I'm looking at 2 and 35 hundredths. So how many ones do I have? I have 2. Then my decimal point. Then I have 35. All I have to do is write 30 and 5. Now, could I write 35 there? No, because you can't put more than one number in a place value. This would be a tenth and it just doesn't work that way. So, or if you said 35 tenths, that would be a lot more than 35 hundredths. So we're going to put the 3 and the 5 for 35. So then, to make sure we're right, we have 2, and 35, 35, lowest place value, hundredths, hundredths. So the decimal form of this would be 2 and 35 hundredths. Great job. All right, let's go ahead and go to page 156. Now on page 156, it's the same problem we've read before. And then it says here, model it. Model the measurements with mixed numbers and expanded form. Write the mixed numbers to show the number of the whole seconds and the fraction of a second given by each measurement, then expand. So 1 and 16 thousandths. So here we have 1 and 16 thousandths. That is our mixed number. That is the same as 1 plus 16 thousandths. Then we can break apart this 16 thousandths as 1 plus 10 thousandths plus 6 thousandths, because we broke apart the 16. And then we can reduce this fraction down, because we can take away, whenever you have a 0 at the end, just like in the last lesson where we added zeros to make it equivalent, in this case, we can actually remove a 0. So if we take 1 0 off the top, we can take 1 0 off the bottom, which makes this 1 100th. So 1 and 16 thousandths is the same as 1 plus 1 100th plus 6 1,000ths. So that is how we would write 1 and 16 thousandths in expanded form. Now, if we were looking at 2 and 35 hundredths, that could be written as 2 plus 35 hundredths, a whole plus a part. We could also write it as 2 plus 30 hundredths plus 5 hundredths. Or, like we did over here, remember that we can take away the 0 as long as it's at the end of each number. And then we can change this to 2 plus 3 tenths plus 5 100ths. and that is expanded form for 2 and 35 hundredths. We can also use the place value chart to write the measurements. 1 and 16 thousandths and 2 and 35 hundredths. We have the 1 and the 1. We have no tenths. We have 100th and 16 thousandths. And then here we have a 1. We have 2 ones, 3 tenths, and 5 hundredths. Now we can say this as 16 thousandths is 10 thousandths and 6 thousandths, or 100th and 6 thousandths. And then 35 hundredths is 30 hundredths and 5 hundredths, or 3 tenths and 5 hundredths. All right, go ahead and go to page 157. So the first, let me zoom out so you can see both pages. There we go. All right, so it says, compare the mixed number and the place value representations of 1 and 16 thousandths. How does each model show the number of whole seconds? So if we're looking at the mixed number and the place value, so we're looking right now just at these two models, and this model down below. Let me move that. All right. How can we compare the two? So let me zoom out just a fraction. There we go. The mixed number shows it as the whole number part. So in the mixed number, this is the whole number part. Okay, that tells you that we have a that's the whole seconds. Okay. So when we're talking about whole seconds, that means not a part of a second, but a whole second. And then down in the model it, the chart shows it as a 1 in the ones column. So here we see our wholes. These are the whole seconds. So this is 1 second and then 16 hundredths of another second. This is 2 seconds and 35 hundredths of another second. Go ahead and pause it if you didn't get that. Otherwise, we're going to continue on. Compare the expanded form and the place value representations of 1 and 16 thousandths. How does each model show the fractional part of a second? So we're looking at this expanded form here, and we're looking at this part of the place value chart here. So the expanded form, the hundredth, shows the hundredth, shows the hundredth as 1 100th, as you can see here, 1 100th. And the 6 thousandths as 6 thousandths. This is the 6 thousandths. So we have 1 and 1 100th and 6 thousandths. The place value chart shows the 1 in the hundredths column. So down here we see the 1 is in the hundredths column, and the 6 is in the thousandths column. So we see the same information in both models, they're just shown differently. So how can we write 1 and 16 thousandths as a decimal? So we have it down here, it's already written for us. We just need to write 1 and then remember we need a thousandth. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3 numbers that we need because it's going to be a thousandths. And then we're going to take this 16 and push it all the way to the right because that's how we can show 16. Then remember, we can't leave this empty. We've got to put something there. That's right, we need that placeholder 0. So we can write it as 1 and 16 thousandths. How can we write 2 and 35 hundredths as a decimal? We start with our whole, 2, and then write our decimal for and then we have 35 hundredths. Since it's hundredths, we know we have 2 place values after the decimal. We have our tenths and our hundredths, and then we have 35 of them. So we're going to write 35. Number 5 says, explain how you can write the standard form of a decimal given in word form. So this is a lot of words, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in and read it to you so you can write it. You may end up needing to pause it to finish writing. It says, first you write the whole number part. So when you're writing in word, when you're given a word form, and you want to write it in the number form, first you're going to look at the beginning part. This 2, we're going to write the whole part of the number, okay? Like the 2. Then we're going to write and for the decimal point. So then you'll see, you'll write, oh, I wrote that backwards. Then you'll write a decimal point for and. Let me fix that. I'm glad I caught that. Okay, then you'll write a decimal point for the and. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Then you'll write a decimal point for the and. Finally, you will write the fractional part all together and use the least place value that matches the fractional part. So go ahead and pause it and get that copied down. All right, after you've copied that down, I want you to think back. Look back at your try it strategies and model it. Which models or strategies do you like best for writing the standard form of a mixed number given in word form? So I've given you a sentence frame here. The strategy I like best for writing standard form from word form is, and then I want you to tell me what you like best. Do you like best to write it as a mixed number and then just say, okay, 1 and 16 thousandths? Do you prefer to change it to expanded form, or do you like using the place value chart? You're going to write that down and tell me why. When you're done, you can go ahead and you can pause it now and finish. And then when you're done, you can turn the page to 158 and move on with me. All right, number 7 says, what decimal represents 10? Oh, so we're going to write a decimal. What decimal represents 10 and 75 hundredths? Show your work. So remember, the first thing we're going to do is write the whole. What is the whole? 10. Then this is what we're using here, okay? Then we see the word and. That tells us that next we're going to see a decimal. Then we need to see what comes next. 75 hundredths. How many place values come there? Well, we've got tenths, hundredths, so that we know we're going to need 2 digits. What 2 digits? 75. So we're going to write 75. So our decimal is 10 and 75 hundredths. Do you see how that works? We wrote the whole number. We wrote the decimal point for and. So there's the whole number. We wrote the decimal point for the and then we knew that there were 2 place values because we knew we needed a hundredths, and then we wrote 75. Great job. I want you, I'm going to do number 8 with you, and then I'm going to have you guys do number 9, and we'll see if you get it right. A number is written in expanded form as 9 times 1,000, 6 times 1, plus 6 times 1, plus 3 times 1/10, plus 8 times 1/1000th. What decimal represents the number? Show your work. This one's going to be a bit more tricky because we've got some work to do. So we still are going to use the same strategy. We're still going to write the whole number first. So we know that we're at least going to have 4 digits next to the decimal because we've got 1,000. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we know how many thousands do we have? We have 9. So that 9 is going to go in our thousands place. And then what always goes next to the ones place? Because we have our thousands, hundreds, tens, ones. Our decimal, that's right. Never forget to put your decimal to the right of the ones place. Now, we have 9 thousands. And then we are going to add to that 6 times 1. So how many ones do we have? 6. So this 6 is going to go in the ones place. Now, can we leave it empty? No, we need to add our 0 placeholders. So we're going to add 2 0 placeholders. Then we're going to come and continue on. We have 3 times 1/10. So we know that we at least are going to go 1 digit over to our tenths. And how many tenths do we have? 3 of them. So the 3 goes in the tenths. Then we're going to add to that 8 thousandths. Now, if I just put an 8 right here, does this say 8 thousandths? No, it doesn't. Remember, it goes tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this would be 8 hundredths. So we can't put the 8 there. We've got to add one more place value and put the 8 here because this is a thousandth. And then we'll put in another placeholder 0. Now I'm going to pull my highlighters out for a minute because I want to show you. We need, let's see, 4 different colors. Here we go. So this 9 times 1,000 is this 9 in the thousands place. This 6 times 1 tells me that there is a 6 in the ones place. Oh, I did that one wrong. See, I caught myself. I hope you guys caught that earlier as well. There is a 6 in the ones place. Oop, now it got all gross. Okay. There is 3 tenths. So that means that there's a 3 in the tenths place. And then finally, there are 8 thousandths. So there's an 8 in the thousandths place. And then we filled in all of our placeholder zeros. So the final decimal should read 9,006 and 308 thousandths. That was a beast of a problem to do. Okay. Finally, as I promised you, number 9, I'm going to have you do it on your own, and then we'll see if you got it right. So it says, which decimal represents 6 and 54 thousandths? Go ahead and pause it now and choose A, B, C, or D for which decimal represents 6 and 54 thousandths. Okay, I'm going to show you my strategy for solving this problem and see if it was similar to your strategy. So the first thing I'm going to do is look and go, okay, I see a 6 and then the word and. So I know that this is where my decimal place goes, and I'm going to have a 6 before my decimal place. So I can immediately rule out any of these answers that do not have a 6 in the ones place because that's where it is. So here I see 60 before the decimal, so that one can't possibly be right. Here I see a 6 before the decimal, so that's still in the running. On C, I also see a 6 before the decimal, so it's still in the running. And then on D, there's a 0 before the decimal. So again, this one could not possibly be right. Next, the next thing I'm going to look at is this word thousandths. Since there's 1,000, that tells me that there are going to be 1, 2, 3 digits after the decimal because I'm going to have a tenth, a hundredth, and a thousandth. So let me look and see. This number has a tenth, a hundredth, and a thousandth. And this number has a tenth, a hundredth, and a thousandth. So they both still are in the running because they both are in have a value of 1,000. The value of the least digit is 1,000th. So now I'm going to go, okay, 54. I need to look at this 54. So if I'm looking at everything that comes after the decimal, which one of these reads 54? Now in both, I see the 5 and the 4 together to read 54. But when I read them all together, here I see 540 thousandths, and here I see 54 thousandths. So I know that now I can rule out this one because 540 thousandths is not the same as 54 thousandths. So C must be my answer. Right now, I want you to go ahead and complete pages 159 and 160 on your own. And as always, if you have any questions, you can email your teacher. See you soon.